February 28th, 1997, 9:17 in the morning, North Hollywood, California. A quiet Friday on Laurel Canyon Boulevard. A Dunkin' Donuts, a dry cleaner, a Bank of America branch just opening its doors for the day. Two men step out of a white Chevrolet Celebrity. They move slowly, deliberately, like men who have done this before. Because they have. They pull black ski masks down over their faces, they check their rifles, and they walk inside. What happens next will last 44 minutes. It will involve 12 police officers wounded, 2 men dead, and nearly 2,000 rounds of ammunition fired on an ordinary American street. It will force every law enforcement agency in the country to rethink everything they thought they knew about stopping a threat. And it will begin like all the worst days do, completely without warning. Inside the bank, the 2 men move fast. One vaults the counter, the other corrals customers and staff toward the center of the floor. They are shouting. They are armed with semi-automatic rifles, modified, illegally, to fire like machine guns. Each one carries over 1,000 rounds of ammunition on his body. They have worn homemade body armor stitched from Kevlar panels. They have planned this meticulously. They have rehearsed it. Their names are Emil Matasareanu and Larry Phillips Jr. Emil is 30 years old. Larry is 26. They have been friends since the late 80s when they met at a gym in Los Angeles and discovered a shared obsession. Not with money exactly, but with the philosophy that the bold take what they want and the weak accept what they're given. They have robbed banks before, together, several of them, and each time they have walked away clean. But something is different today. A die pack embedded in the stolen cash detonates early. The take is smaller than expected, and by the time they move toward the exit, something is very, very wrong. The police are already outside. A patrol officer named Lauren Farrell had been parked nearby. A routine call, an ordinary Friday. But he spots the 2 men entering the bank in masks, and he does not hesitate. Within 90 seconds, units begin to converge on Laurel Canyon Boulevard. The dispatcher's voice stays controlled, but the officers listening know what they are hearing. This is not a drill. This is happening right now. They set up a perimeter, standard protocol. They are trained for bank robberies. Get the cordon tight, wait them out, negotiate. What they are not trained for, what no department in America is trained for in 1997, is what walks out of that bank door. Larry Phillips comes out first. He is firing before his foot hits the sidewalk. The sound is not like anything these officers have heard outside of a military exercise. The rifles, modified AK-47 variants, are cycling at a rate that makes individual shots indistinguishable. It is a wall of sound, a wave. Officers diving behind squad cars feel rounds punching through the doors like they are made of paper, because they are. Standard police cruiser doors do not stop rifle fire. The officers know this in an instant. They are outgunned. Sergeant Dean Haynes is crouched behind his cruiser when a burst of fire tears through the windshield 2 feet above his head. He radios in. The call goes out across the city. 12-gauge shotguns are doing almost nothing. Rounds are hitting both men. They can see it.
It was just a street.
Phillips staggers at one point. He keeps firing. Matasareanu absorbs multiple hits to the chest and barely breaks stride. The homemade armor is working, and the 2 men seem to have no intention of escaping, no intention of surrendering. They are not trying to get away anymore. They are just fighting. Inside a nearby newsroom, a traffic helicopter is already up. The pilot redirects, the camera locks on, and suddenly millions of people across Los Angeles are watching this happen live on television. Officers, pinned, Two men walking through a blizzard of return fire, and a neighborhood frozen in a kind of disbelief that doesn't have a name yet. People are watching from apartment windows. Store owners are flat on the floor behind counters. A UPS driver abandons his truck in the middle of the street and runs. Children are being pulled back from school windows by teachers who are trying to make sense of what they're hearing. The world outside that bank has become a place where the normal rules no longer apply. And the worst part, the thing that will haunt everyone who is there that morning, is that it takes a very long time for it to end. 44 minutes. Think about that. In a world of cell phones and satellite feeds and instant response, two men hold an entire police force at bay for 44 minutes on a public street. They move through the neighborhood. They commandeer a truck. Phillips, wounded and staggering, appears to shoot himself during a struggle with officers. The exact sequence disputed, debated, reviewed for years afterward. He dies at the scene. Madasaranu moves further down the street. He is hit repeatedly. The armor covers his torso, his arms, his thighs. But his legs, below the knee, his ankles, they are exposed. It is there, finally, that the rounds find something unprotected. He goes down in the parking lot of a car dealership. He bleeds out. He dies. The shooting stops. The street is silent. And then the world begins to understand the scope of what just happened. 12 officers are wounded. More than 30 civilians are injured by ricochets, debris, and the chaos of flight. Nearly 2,000 rounds have been fired in a residential neighborhood in broad daylight. The Bank of America on Laurel Canyon will never look the same to anyone who drove past it that Friday morning and thought it was just another unremarkable day. In the aftermath, the LAPD acknowledges something that law enforcement agencies across the country had quietly feared. They were simply not equipped for a threat like this. Standard patrol officers carry handguns. Their rounds bounced off homemade armor. Their cover did not hold against rifle fire. Within months, the LAPD begins issuing patrol rifles. Other departments follow. The North Hollywood Shootout becomes a mandatory case study at every major law enforcement training program in the country. It rewrites the rule book, not in theory, but because the alternative, facing it again unprepared, is unthinkable. But here is the thing about Emil Matasaranu and Larry Phillips Jr. that no official report quite captures. They didn't do this for the money. They had robbed banks before and gotten away. They had the skills, the planning, the discipline. They could have kept doing it quietly, in and out, no confrontation, like professionals. Instead, on February 28, 1997, they show up armored from head to nearly toe, carrying a combined 4,000 rounds of ammunition in broad daylight at a bank that has already flagged them to authorities. They walked out firing when they could have surrendered. They walked toward the police rather than away from them. The official narrative calls it a robbery gone wrong, a die pack, a perimeter they didn't expect, a plan that unraveled. But what if it didn't unravel? What if this, the armor, the weapons, the ammunition they could never have spent in any escape, what if this was always the plan? Not a robbery with a confrontation, but a confrontation with a robbery attached to the front of it. What were they trying to prove, and to whom? The bank still stands on Laurel Canyon Boulevard. The bullet holes were repaired long ago. The neighborhood moved on, the way neighborhoods do. New shops, new faces, new Friday mornings that feel ordinary and safe. But somewhere in the archive footage, the raw, unedited helicopter feed from that morning, there is a moment just before the first shot is fired where you can see Larry Phillips standing on the sidewalk. He pauses, He looks up and down the street, at the police cars, at the cameras, at the whole impossible situation he has walked himself into, and he raises his rifle. Not in panic, not in desperation. Slowly, deliberately, like a man who has already decided exactly how this ends. The question that nobody has ever been able to answer, the one that keeps investigators and criminologists and true crime obsessives awake at 3 in the morning, is whether Larry Phillips, in that final pause on that sunlit sidewalk, was afraid, or whether, God help us, he was satisfied.